What's up, guys? You should be watching us on Twitch every Monday and Wednesday, where you can see us chat about our lives and give great life advice, or talk about football and give great fantasy football advice. So again, check out our Twitch every Monday and Wednesday at twitch.com/daydreamermedia.
Welcome into the Fantasy Daydreamers podcast. I am JJ. You guys can follow me on Twitter at JJ Daydreamers for however much longer Twitter is around. With me, I got Keone.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, everybody of all denominations. Oh, it is so good to be here. And yes, Twitter, I'm going to try and tweet as much as possible for about fantasy football in the coming future so I can potentially be hired on and then get a golden parachute before Elon fires me again. So you can do that, though, in the meantime, at Daydreamer Keone.
And Ryan is here.
What's up, guys? Robot Rocco is still here. ROKKO.
Rocco.
Hey,
Daydreamer.
It's Robot
And all I know
Rocco.
Robot Rocco.
Is I really am down to get verified. I will pay the $8 for the blue check mark next to my name. It's lit to me, boy. Start getting my tweets off. Popping.
Well, if you guys wouldn't mind, go ahead and follow, like, subscribe, whatever it's called, wherever you are listening to this, whatever platform you're using right now, go ahead and do that. And tell your friends, because we need help. We want to get verified, and we don't want to pay the $8. So do that.
I'm willing to pay. I don't know. You're crazy.
Let's get into some news. All right. Texans wide receiver Brandon Cooks returned to practice on Wednesday. Do you guys have confidence in playing him this week?
Someone dropped him in the league I'm in, and I am
Ooh.
willing to pick him up. I wouldn't play him, but I'm willing to pick him up.
I agree with
Interesting.
that. Pick him up.
Yeah. It's not
Put
a
him on your bench.
not a bad. Yeah, exactly. It's not a bad guy
You
to
know,
have
he
on
threw
your
his
bench.
hissy fit. Yeah, he got his. He's like, I'm so upset I didn't play. Great. Now it's time to be professional.
Mm. Yeah.
Bills quarterback Josh Allen is dealing with a UCL injury. The belief is that he can manage the injury. He did not practice on Wednesday and is considered day-to-day. Make sure you got your backup plan in for Josh Allen. Who would you guys be streaming this week? Or is there anyone that sticks out to you?
Well, if you weren't lucky enough to get Justin Fields, Jimmy G might be a guy. Jared Goff versus Chicago. There's a league where Russell Wilson's available. Against Tennessee. I might take the ride. I got Josh Allen in the league, and I'm happy. It might be a one game, might be at most maybe two, but or he might play. Who knows? But I think he's probably gonna miss one game. Take the ride with Russell, Tennessee and Vegas, next two matchups. I'm thinking about it.
I would rather go with Marcus Mariota against Carolina.
Yeah, really?
Yeah, rushing floor.
Carolina's defense is bad.
They're not terrible, but they're also not looking great. But yeah, I like Jimmy G and Justin Fields definitely. If he's not already picked up, that would be the number one against Detroit this week.
Absolutely. I agree with that. Justin Fields and Jimmy G. I think he might have a good matchup this week. But I think we'll discuss that more in a little bit.
Panthers running back Chuba Hubbard sounds like he will play in Thursday night's game after missing a couple weeks. You guys staying away from Hubbard? You guys want to see it first? Or are you ready to throw him right in?
Thursdays are, I don't know. Thursday nights are weird, especially if he's going to be kind of going with Dante Foreman. Although, we saw what Dante Foreman did last week, and that wasn't that much. But I don't know. I'm hopefully you have somebody else you can play besides Chuba Hubbard. To be in all honesty, so
I'm waiting. I wouldn't start him.
Yeah, I mean,
think about it.
wait and see. Cowboys running back Ezekiel Elliott is expected to be ready to go. He was a limited participant in Wednesday's practice. Man.
Damn. Tony Pollard. We were so close.
Yeah.
Say la vie.
Yeah. Can you starting Zeke first game back, or are you just sitting both Zeke and Pollard?
Do they face Green Bay this week? Or is that next week?
No, they're playing Green Bay. I think I would
Green Bay
have
in
to
the Lambeau.
start. I would start Zeke. I think he's a good flex play if he plays because this Packers defense is losing guys. I mean, they lost Rashad Gary to ACL. Their run defense is already bad before. I think Zeke could get in the end zone.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's can come back, and because they gave him a few weeks to rest, and and they did that specifically. So he's not the explosive back that Pollard is, but he is the touchdown / down the nose kind of guy. So
Chargers wide receiver Keenan Allen did not practice on Wednesday. You're gonna have to sit him again.
Just if I had a keyboard, just slam your head into it. My goodness. I mean, you should already be expecting this at this point, and so, it's par for the course. But still, it's just like, come on already.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Cardinals quarterback Kyler Murray is day-to-day with a hamstring injury. It doesn't sound like it's a big deal, but it's, quote, not nothing.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, just dealing with a hamstring injury that could limit Kyler. We've seen him get banged up almost every year in the second half of the year, where he's dealing with something where
around this time.
Yeah, he can't scramble as good, and it really affects his play.
Isn't that new Call of Duty game coming out or something like that? So,
It's about to be a double XP weekend coming up.
Amazing.
And Colts running back Jonathan Taylor was a limited participant in practice on Wednesday. Oh, man. Deion Jackson didn't practice. Jonathan Taylor limited. You guys think they might? I mean, I get the feeling that they might shut him down for the season.
I mean, if they're thinking about the future, like they might as well, because the moves they've made make it seem like they're preparing for years to come, or not this year, other years.
I think that they actually might play Taylor.
If they lose, then they might shut him down.
He got re-injured. Because you can't, if you're going to have this big press conference and all this stuff, I think you have to win your first game. Like you got to go all out. I mean, you can't say you're the most winningest quartile and that you're the top quartile of it and all this other shit, and then lose to the Raiders, who are struggling as well.
All right, that'll do it for the news. Let's get into some start-sit questions.
You've got questions, we've got answers.
So if you guys have any start-sit questions, you guys can DM us on Instagram or Twitter at FF Daydreamers. Follow us there. DMs are always open. We're here to help you guys win your championships. So here's some questions we got this week. Deontay Johnson versus the New Orleans Saints or Antonio Gibson at the Philadelphia Eagles?
Antonio Gibson at Philadelphia.
Okay. Why? Just what is your reasoning?
Show
your work.
I just think he has better I think Eagles kind of struggle against running backs. I mean, we allow a lot of runs. You saw it with Dameon Pierce last week. You've seen it with Swift and Williams week 1. It's been a trend. Gibson, good pass catcher. Still Heineke back there. I think the Eagles dominate, but Gibson's going to have to get, I think, 4 to 5 targets and see what he does. JJ just said all this stuff about Deontay Johnson. I can't pick Deontay Johnson.
I know he did. I know, I don't want to choose either of these guys though, but I'm not sure how many targets, Antonio Gibson is going to get. He's not really Deontay Johnson is still a target guy. So even if he's not great and he doesn't get a lot of yards in PPR, a catch is a point. So I think I'm gonna go with Johnson just because he might get more looks and targets, touches of the ball. Well, not necessarily touches of the ball, but his receptions in PPR might put him ahead of the amount of yards that Antonio Gibson is getting, and whether he may or may not get thrown the ball. I know Deontay Johnson will be thrown the ball.
In the last 3 games, he has 14 targets and 28 carries. So that's good. Yeah, I think that's better than Johnson.
Yeah.
Okay.
I go with Antonio Gibson as well. I mean, you're right, Keone. And I think in half PPR, not full PPR, so maybe that makes a little bit of a difference. But Johnson's only had 5 receptions in the last 4 games. That's his total. And he's also hit 60 yards once, 42 yards, 35 yards, 28 yards. He's not getting any yards as of late.
Do you think he'll get more targets now that Claypool is gone? Do you think him and Pickens, now that he's gone, do you think
I don't
him and
think
Pickens
so because he's still seeing almost 9 targets a game.
Okay.
So,
but I do hope you guys win.
Yeah, me too. Me too. But I got to go Antonio Gibson here. He's not looked terrible. We've never really thought he looked terrible. He just doesn't get the workload that we've always wanted. We want him to be used as a pass catcher. J.D. McKissick banged up. I think that helps Antonio Gibson get a few more receptions out there, or at least a few more targets. And playing from behind, I think that'll get him a few more targets as well. And so I lean Antonio Gibson here. All right, next question. Trevor Lawrence, T-Law at Kansas City, or Jimmy G versus the Chargers, the streamer we talked about.
I'm gonna stick with Jimmy G. He's been pretty consistent as of late with 4 games in a row with at least 2 passing touchdowns. 3 of those were over 250 yards. I think CMC can help add yards after the catch for sure to any quarterback. So if he just dumps the ball off to CMC, that's going to be, potentially, 40 yards on a single play, because CMC is just that good. And Jimmy G will reap the benefits. And I don't see why they wouldn't necessarily do that. I mean, it's not like they're going to do that every play, but I can see them doing that for a good handful of plays throughout the game. Lawrence does have a better matchup, but he's kind of been up and down this season. And Jimmy G is coming off the bye versus a Chargers defense that is banged up and has not been great. So they have too many good weapons to not do well, I don't think. So I'm going to go with Jimmy G.
I'm calling the upset special. Trevor Lawrence is going to go inside Kansas City and beat the Chiefs. The Chiefs' kryptonite is the AFC South. They lost to the Colts. They barely beat the Titans, and they're going to lose to the Jags. Trevor Lawrence throwing 3 touchdowns. Give me Trevor Lawrence.
That is wild.
Dang.
Trevor Lawrence almost never throws 3 touchdowns. That's he's done it once.
That's why I'm making it bold, baby.
Yeah. Trevor
You guys
Lawrence
wanted
is
a hot
just
take? I drop him hot.
he's just so up and down. Like sometimes he's throwing the ball 22 times a game, other times he's throwing it 47 times a game. He's really been up and down this season. I gotta go Jimmy G here. Jimmy
Doug.
Gorgeous.
Doug Pearson versus
Doug Peterson versus Andy Reid. I know. I don't hate Trevor Lawrence in the matchup. I think that they're gonna have to be throwing the ball to stick with this Kansas City offense, obviously. I just don't think that the Jaguars offense is good enough to actually stick with the Kansas City offense. So all right. Next question. Amari Cooper at Miami or DJ Moore versus Atlanta?
This is the easiest one because we all know the answer. Amari Cooper only performs at home. It's been a fact. He can't go on the road and perform. This is DJ Moore versus Atlanta. Revenge game for the penalty getting taken off, or for his helmet getting taken off, whatever it was.
Even though he had an opportunity last week and he didn't. But I agree with you. I think DJ Moore, the matchup is too good. Atlanta is terrible against the pass. They're 31st. I think Moore has a chance to come back, from a bad game. Cooper has been pretty consistent, and they're coming out of a bye versus a bad Miami secondary. This is really close. But I'm going to go, I think Moore has a little bit more upside given the matchup and a higher boom chance potentially, than Cooper this week. So I'm going to go with DJ Moore.
He's been consistently bad. Amari Cooper on the road has not caught more than 3 passes this year. Carolina 3 passes, Atlanta 1 pass, at Baltimore 3 passes. It's been bad. Don't do it.
You talked me into it. I'm not starting Amari Cooper. Yeah, you guys probably saw that coming if you've listened to me ever talk about Amari Cooper before. I never want to start him. So I'll go with DJ Moore as well. Like he only nailed, Atlanta's secondary is poor. So all right, next question. Raheem Mostert versus Cleveland Browns or Juju Smith-Schuster versus the Jacksonville Jaguars?
I think this is a hard one. This is a pretty good one because I would play both. Mostert, he's in a 50-50 split. It looks like with Wilson. Juju's really coming into his own as the number 2 pass catcher there. I'm going to go with Juju versus the Jags.
I gotta go with Juju as well. He's been pretty consistent the past few weeks. And throughout the season, he's only had 2 games under 8 targets. Since week 6, he's finished as the wide receiver 7, 4. Then they had a bye, and then he finished as the wide receiver 8. Mostert now is splitting his time behind Jeff Wilson, and Jeff Wilson immediately came in and outsnapped him. So I'm going to stay with the hot hand, and that's Schuster.
Yeah, definitely. I think Mostert still will be the number 1 there. He outsnapped, was undersnapped by 1 snap last week. But to do that in your first week with the team for Jeff Wilson, that says a lot. And the way that they've been using Raheem Mostert, we all thought it couldn't last all season just with Mostert's history and everything, and they went and got a guy that could come in and actually split time with him. I go with Juju Smith-Schuster here as well. It seems to be the number 1 wide receiver for Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes. Pretty good one though. All right, last question. Cade Otton versus the Seattle Seahawks in Germany, or Robert Tonyan versus the Dallas Cowboys?
I wouldn't go Tonyan. I wouldn't touch him with a 9-foot pole. I think the Packers are going to get dominated by the Cowboys. Real revenge game right there. I made a joke last time about Doug Pearson, but Mike McCarthy going back up to Green Bay. This is about to be a stomping of a lifetime. So Cade Otton, just by default. You could put any tight end in here. You could list JJ as tight end. I would pick.
I agree with Ryan. I'm going to go with Cade Otton. Tonyan, they both get targets, but Tunyon doesn't get a lot of yards, and he's had no touchdowns since week 4, which was his only touchdown of the season. Cade Otton also only has 1 touchdown, but it came in this past week. And also he was behind Cameron Brate, who has been injured or been out with concussion protocol and stuff like that. If this offense, this Tampa Bay offense picks up like some people have been thinking they will do, he might be a valuable weapon in this offense. Versus the tight end, the Seahawks are a cushy matchup. So I'm going to go with Otton between this duo.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. You're looking for a touchdown. I guess either of these guys can catch a touchdown, but both streaming options, and I'm sorry that you are having to choose between these two. But I give it to Otton. Higher likelihood that he scores a touchdown. So that's where I'll go. All right, that'll do it for our start sit questions. Let's move on to our second half studs. So who is someone who is going to win people fantasy championships the second half of the season going forward? Who you guys got?
For me, Ken Walker. The guy has been on an absolute tear since Penny got hurt. Last 5 games, 512 yards, averaging 6 yards a carry, 7 touchdowns. This Seattle's offense is really getting going. He's not much of a pass catcher, but with his rushing ability, he scored a touchdown in all 5 games. Just phenomenal. He could be a guy who can definitely be an RB1. The matchups are a little up and down. I know he goes against San Francisco, but he has some weaker matchups in there as well come playoff time. I think he's an RB1 all the way.
Yeah, it's one of those where it's like he kind of fell into your lap once Penny got injured, and you were holding on to him for dear life until the end of the season because he is just tremendous. Athletic, fast, hard-nosed, on an offense that is doing well, and he facilitates that. So, yeah, absolutely.
Week 14 through week 17, Carolina, San Francisco. So you don't love San Francisco week 15, obviously, but Kansas City and then the Jets. I think those are 3 out of 4 games there where he could be over 100 yards and a touchdown easy.
Yeah, and that's what you need in playoffs. So I'm going to go with a guy that we talked about earlier this week as a waiver wire guy, just above that 45% threshold. But, we talked about him for a reason. It's Justin Fields. Before we get into, the present and future, we have to go back to the past and build up, in weeks 1 through 4. In that span, he never finished higher than quarterback 23, and he had an average of 105.5 total yards with 3 touchdowns to 4 turnovers. It was off to a really bad start for Justin Fields, to say the least, but he has really turned this season around despite the relatively minimal talent around him and them also getting rid of pieces. Who would have known giving your quarterback what he needs would make a difference? Since week 5, he has had over 250 total yards in each game. In that same span, he has finished as the QB 12, 9, 5, 5, and 1 to be the overall QB 7 on the year. Also, since week 5, he has found the end zone 11 total times to just 2 interceptions and has 3 multi-touchdown games in a row, with each of those having a rushing touchdown. He ran for a NFL record 178 yards in this past game as a quarterback. And while he can't maintain that forever, it's a huge flashing sign that this team is utilizing him in a way that appeals to not only his talent and his athletic skills, but they're using his gifts that he has to play the quarterback position. So moving forward, he faces the Lions this week, Atlanta, then the Jets, and then in an attempt to be free from the clutches of Aaron Rodgers, the Bears face Green Bay in week 13 before their bye. Weeks 15 and 16 might be tough, but then in week 17, in your likely fantasy championships, they face Detroit. So I like a majority of those matchups coming up. I think Fields can be a waiver wire darling that brings you into a field of dreams for fantasy.
It's crazy to watch that team from the beginning of the year because it was almost like they were telling him, don't scramble, don't run, just throw the ball. And then they were finally at one point were just like, fine, just do whatever you want. Do whatever. Yeah. And he's like, okay, I'll just run for 170 yards. Like I could have been doing this the whole time, but you guys were holding me back kind of thing. Yes.
Yeah. You literally had Mike McDaniel saying, stop. For the love of God, stop, man. Just quit your running. It's killing us. Even though Miami still won, and he was joking, but still, you're having coaches say stop. And that's a good sign.
All right. My player is going to be DeAndre Hopkins. So if you were able to hold on to DeAndre Hopkins through his suspension, or if you were doing so well that you were able to say, hey, throw in DeAndre Hopkins on his suspension for me and we'll get this deal done for X trade, whatever it was. Or if you were truly, truly blessed, pretty much you would have to be in a league where you don't have an IR spot or a suspended player can't be on an IR spot. And, something went wrong on some team where he had to be dropped. I'm sure it happened in a couple leagues out there, but if that happened and you got him on waivers, that's a come up. He has been a top 20 wide receiver every week that he's played, averaging over 10 targets and over 8 receptions a game. This guy is DeAndre Hopkins. He's a top wide receiver in the league, and he has reminded us of it every single week he's played this season. 3 games, that's all, but over that stretch, he's the wide receiver 2, averaging 18.3 fantasy points a game. His schedule isn't super friendly. They play the Rams, 49ers, Chargers, Patriots, Broncos, Bucks, and the Falcons, and they still have their bye. They haven't had their bye yet, so you're going to have to put him on your bench in week 13. But even through Kyler Murray's injury and everything going on with the Cardinals through that schedule, DeAndre Hopkins is too talented not to be a top wide receiver at the end of this season. He's going to be fantasy relevant going forward.
My last guy who I think can get you to that championship game is to be Christian Kirk. Listen, up and down season. First 3 games, 18 receptions, 267 yards, and 4 touchdowns. His next 3 games, only 7 receptions, 95 yards, and a touchdown. These last 3 games, back up to 18 receptions, 212 yards, and a touchdown. They're finding his groove again. They're giving him the ball. These next matchups, Kansas City, then he has a bye week, but Baltimore, Detroit, Tennessee, people you can throw the ball against. You saw it, Mahomes threw over 400 yards. Detroit's one of the worst pass defenses in the league, and Baltimore is better against the run than it is the pass. I think there's a chance where Kirk can really get you there. I just like this Jags offense. I mean, it's an iffy team. They do wild stuff all the time, but they pass the ball and get it up and down the field.
Was he a daydream player for you?
Yes. So I've been on and off this bandwagon all year long, baby. I mean, that I was quiet during that 3-game stretch where he only had 7 receptions, but
if this podcast is one thing, we are committed.
Yeah,
Exactly.
loyalty, respect, honor.
That's all right. Robot Rocco coming back at you.
Oh, you can't see him, Robot Rocco.
Or here.
So I'm going to go a different type of player with my second guy. Still a guy who can win you championships in a way, but in a different form than a guy who's just going to straight up ball out each and every week. This is a particular type of player. It's a guy that, you know, is not going to lose you games and is going to be that kind of standard floor of, you know, he's going to put in solid performances that elevates your team to where they need to be, so you don't just put up a goose egg. And it's going to be Alan Lazard. I've been kind of noticing this entire season, like, he's been pretty consistent, a potential Mr. Consistent candidate, but that's what you want to see on, you know, your championship teams. Those all have guys who facilitate that consistency role. They're not going to boom every week necessarily. They might in some weeks, but they're also not going to give you, you know, a under 5 fantasy point performance. And Alan Lazard is that guy. You know, that team is not great in Green Bay, but if there's one bright spot on that offense when he plays, it's Alan Lazard. You know, Aaron Rodgers has a lot of trust issues that I'm not sure if he's going to therapy for or not. If he is, great for him. But on the field, his security blanket is Alan Lazard.
Weighted
you know, and
blanket.
kind of his weighted blanket, nice and comfy, especially during these colder months. You know, it's going to be needed on your championship run. But he's going to put up good numbers regardless of matchup. And since week 3, he has finished as the wide receiver 33 or better in PPR leagues. He's finished as the wide receiver 30, 16, 23, 13, and 32. Again, not going to ball out, not super top performances, but not bottom of the barrel either. He was out for week 8, but in week 9, he was the wide receiver 9. And in 5 out of those 7 games he's played this season, he's had a touchdown. So he finds the end zone, which is key. And since week 3, he's had at least 6 targets and is averaging 8 over his last 6 games. He can be up and down in terms of yards, but he gets the ball thrown his way, and that's what you like to see. And he'll likely find the end zone in a game. His remaining schedule is a little tough before the bye, with Dallas and Philadelphia as 2 of those games. But after that bye, weeks 15 through 17, he faces the Rams, Miami, and then Minnesota. I like those matchups on a championship run in the fantasy playoffs. So Alan Lazard is my second, you know, stud of the second half of this season.
All right. And I got, the Jaguars have told us what they believe in, and that's Travis Etienne. They believe in Travis Etienne. So that's who I'm going with. They traded away James Robinson and have fully turned this backfield over to Etienne. Over the past 5 weeks, he's been the RB 22 or better every single week. But Robinson was still on the team for 2 of those games. So in the last 3 games, he's been the RB 9 or better every week. A top 10 running back every week, seeing 79 to 81% of the offensive snaps, seeing 24 touches for 135 yards, averaging those numbers, and has shown that he knows how to find the end zone. He's the RB 11 on the season, and things are just looking up and up and up for him going forward. As long as he can stay healthy and on the field, I mean, he's not the biggest guy. I don't think he's a hobbit like some other players, but maybe he's like a dwarf, a little angrier, definitely stronger than a hobbit. Either way, I am following what the Jaguars have shown us with their actions. They're giving it to ETN, and it's gonna lead to fantasy production. All right, that'll do it for the podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening, sticking around this long. If you wouldn't mind, go ahead, like, subscribe, follow wherever you are listening to this. Tell your friends, because that's how we grow, and we would really like to grow and get a bigger audience. Head over to our website, fantasydaydreamers.com. Get all of our content there, including our articles. Daydreamer.com, fantasydaydreamer.com exclusive articles coming out there. YouTube, Daydreamer Media over there. Instagram and Twitter at FF Daydreamer. Same with the TikTok at FF Daydreamers. And we got our twitch.com/Daydreamer Media where we are live Monday and Wednesday nights. So come join the party over there. Follow us there. Click that notification bell so that way you guys never miss whenever we go live. Stay dreaming.
Stay dreaming.
Stay dreaming.